I took a risk and brought my daughter to the company's annual gala just so she could get a fancy meal. I never expected the CEO, feeling magnanimous, to decide to sit at our table. My daughter, Penny, stared at the big boss, blinking her big eyes. He looked back at her. She turned to me and chirped, "Mommy," then fixed the CEO with a serious look. "This is my mommy. Why aren't you calling her mommy?" Every eye in the room swiveled to me and the CEO. I quickly covered my daughter's mouth, forcing an awkward laugh. "She's just a kid, you know how they are." Penny wriggled free and pointed a tiny finger at my colleagues nearby. "Mia and Leo call you mommy, too," she said innocently. Mia and Leo were our new interns. I'd seen them ordering takeout all the time, so I'd invited the two kids over for a few home-cooked meals. They were so grateful they'd gotten teary-eyed and called me mommy. I scooped Penny up and rushed for the exit. "Excuse us, she needs the restroom." Penny struggled, trying to say more, but she was no match for my strength and had to give in. "Penny, what did you promise mommy before we left?" I stood her against the wall, her hands flat against her legs, my voice stern. "I'd only eat and not talk," she pouted, starting to turn on the charm. "I'm sorry, mommy. Mommy, I'm so hungry. No more nonsense when we go back." I tweaked her little ear, and she winced, promising to behave. I figured the CEO would have left, but he was still sitting there. When my colleagues saw me return, they tried to smooth things over, telling me to eat up before the food got cold. I was busy eating and looking after Penny when a piece of pork rib suddenly appeared on her plate. Before I could say thank you, Penny shrieked, "You didn't use the serving utensils. That's unsanitary." Everyone's head snapped in our direction. They saw the CEO's chopsticks hovering over the plate, not yet retracted, then quickly looked down as if they hadn't seen a thing. The CEO cleared his throat twice, took the rib back, and then used the serving tongs to give Penny a new piece. The little girl nodded in satisfaction, then placed a piece of beef on Cole's plate. One good turn deserves another. As if a switch had been flipped, the two of them started a back and forth, taking care of each other. Though embarrassed, I took the opportunity to eat my fill, feeling completely satisfied. Halfway through the meal, Cole had to leave for something, and the entire table breathed a collective sigh of relief. "Hannah, I think I was getting indigestion," Leo said quietly, watching Cole's retreating back. "Me too," Mia added quickly. I couldn't eat another bite. Looking at little Penny, who was still happily stuffing her face, I couldn't help but give her a thumbs up. It was late when we got home. Penny had run wild all day and fell asleep the second her head hit the pillow, no coaxing needed. I had just gotten into bed after a shower when my phone lit up. I opened my texts and saw 2 words from him: "Come over." After making sure Penny was sound asleep, I went to the apartment next door. Before I could even touch the fingerprint scanner, the door swung open from the inside. A pair of strong arms pulled me in and pinned me against the wall in the entryway. He held my waist, his nose brushing against mine as he playfully nipped my lips. "Mommy?" My face turned beet red. "She's just a kid, she doesn't know what she's saying." A low chuckle escaped his lips, and he raised an eyebrow as if in thought. "Well, she's not entirely wrong." Then he swept me into his arms, and the next thing I knew, it was 8 in the morning. I scrambled to get dressed, terrified that Penny would wake up and not find me. Cole leaned against the headboard. "I already had someone go over to your place." "Who?" I asked. He frowned. "Those kids you adopted at the office." A second later, my phone rang. It was Mia. "Hannah, Penny's still asleep. Don't worry about your business trip, I've got her." Knowing Penny was being looked after, I finally relaxed, my movements slowing. Cole wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Since you're awake, how about a little morning exercise?" Cole had a business trip and had to be at the airport by noon. Before leaving, he had someone deliver an order of steamed pork ribs. It was my favorite dish, and Penny's too. The clock on the wall struck 6. I brought the ribs home and called Penny and Mia to dinner. Last night was an exception. Cole usually didn't have me stay over. We had kept our relationship well hidden. He was the high and mighty CEO, and I was just an unremarkable secretary in his office. This time, he was going to be gone for 3 months, and I felt a sense of relief I hadn't felt before. He transferred money to my account on the 1st of every month, but this time, he sent 6 months' worth all at once. I used the money to take Penny to the buffet she'd been begging to go to for ages. Cole had never treated me poorly, but I knew the day would come when he'd get tired of me. When that day came, I'd take Penny and leave New York, returning to my hometown. My hometown wasn't as glamorous as New York City, but the schools were decent. More importantly, I wouldn't have to live on edge every day. I was grateful that Penny looked so much like me right now, with no trace of Cole. But as she got older, some of her little mannerisms were starting to look uncannily like his, and I was beginning to feel uneasy. Getting pregnant with Penny was a complete accident. 6 years ago, I was a new hire at the company. The executive assistant was on a business trip, so I was temporarily assigned to accompany Cole to a client meeting. As it turned out, Cole was drugged. I had just graduated, and my grandmother was seriously ill and needed money for surgery. I steeled myself, slept with Cole, and planned to use it as blackmail. But before I could even demand the hush money, the hospital called to tell me my grandmother wasn't going to make it. I dragged my exhausted body to the hospital but didn't get to see her one last time. Without money, I couldn't even decide where she would be buried. Later, my relatives pooled some money and bought her a plot in the public cemetery back home. 3 days later, I returned to the secretary's office. The executive assistant knew about my grandmother and comforted me, telling me to let it go, not to overthink things, and to live in the moment. I smiled and agreed, but I had already written my resignation letter. After what I'd done, forget being fired, I could have gone to jail. But the shoe never dropped. Instead, the company transferred me to the Albany branch for a training opportunity. I felt a knot of anxiety and asked around, trying to find out why they were sending me away. The executive assistant just said it was a good thing and told me not to worry. I only found out later that the person who had set Cole up that night was the head of the Albany branch. The woman had threatened to jump off a building if Cole didn't marry her. Cole called her parents directly. To apologize, her parents even gave Mr. Cole a piece of land. That woman had been obsessed with Mr. Cole for ages, a colleague gossiped. Apparently she's the daughter of one of his family's old friends. She used to be at headquarters before getting transferred to the branch. You know about her and Mr. Cole? Another colleague nudged me, launching into a vivid story. I was shocked. Had another woman gone into his room after I left? Weren't there any security cameras? I asked, feigning curiosity. She's a rich girl, she plans things out. She had all the cameras on that floor turned off. If Mr. Cole hadn't stood his ground, we'd probably all be getting wedding invitations by now, another colleague said knowingly. I let out a long sigh of relief. I could tear up the resignation letter. You really lucked out, a coworker joked. The branch office may be small, but it's still a cushy gig. I just smiled without saying anything. Not long after arriving in Albany, I discovered I was pregnant. My first instinct was to get an abortion. But I desperately craved family, craved companionship. After agonizing over it, I decided to keep the baby. You could say I was lucky. Just a few days after I found out I was pregnant, another colleague was sent to Albany for training, taking a lot of the work pressure off me. By the time I returned to headquarters, Penny could already talk. My colleagues at the main office were shocked to see me come back with a child. I spun a story about getting engaged in Albany, only for my fiancé to die in a car crash. They all expressed their sympathy, saying that at least having a child gave me something to live for. I put on a sad smile and played along. As for Cole and me, he was the one who approached me. He said adults have physical needs, and since I already had a child, I wouldn't get clingy like other younger women. He also said he'd help me move to a better neighborhood and give me extra money every month. I stared into his eyes, lost in thought, and didn't say a word. Is the offer too low, Ms. Yi? He asked. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was more than enough for Penny and me. It's not a lot, I replied honestly. He let out a low laugh. Don't worry. You won't get the short end of the stick. Cole texted me saying he wanted a home-cooked meal. The message instantly annoyed me. I had already promised Penny I'd steam fish for dinner. There was no way I was going to his place. He usually didn't contact me the day he got back from a trip. This surprise attack was not welcome. Not long after I sent my refusal, the doorbell rang. Penny ran to the door, cheering, "Boba tea, boba tea." Feeling uneasy, I went to see who it was. To my surprise, Cole was standing in my entryway, looking travel-worn. "Mommy, we don't have shoes for him," Penny said, frowning up at me. Caught completely off guard by Cole, I had no choice but to offer him Leo's slippers. "Those are Leo's," Penny pouted. "It's okay, sweetie. Mommy will buy Leo a new pair," I said, squatting down to hold her little hands. Suddenly, I felt a burning gaze on me. I instinctively glanced down at my chest and remembered I was wearing a camisole. Just as I was flustered, the doorbell rang again. Cole casually opened the door and took a foil-lined bag from the delivery driver. "Boba tea." Penny cried happily, reaching for the bag in Cole's hands. Cole took off his shoes but ignored Leo's slippers. With the bag in one hand and the other in his pocket, he walked into the living room. Penny followed him like an expectant puppy. He slowly took out the tea, inserted the straw, and gestured for Penny to hold the cup with both hands. The little girl's eyes were glued to the boba. She did whatever Cole said until she finally had it in her hands. She took a huge slurp and let out a sigh of pure bliss. "Mommy, can I drink my tea while I play on my tablet?" she asked, her eyes pleading, "Don't say no." I nodded, and she dashed off to her room with the tea. Once her door was shut, I finally had a moment to deal with Cole. For once, I didn't call him Mr. Cole. Instead, I said, "Cole, why are you at my house?" He took a sip of the other tea from the bag. "Too sweet," he commented. Then he walked to the entryway, dragged his carry-on suitcase inside, and announced, "I want to take a shower." He said it so naturally, as if he were in his own home. I made a childish attempt to push him out, but he just pulled me into his arms. "Be good." Raising a child costs a lot of money. Cole's tone was light, but there was no hint of a smile in his eyes. "Isn't that right?" His words were like a slap in the face, waking me up. He showed me the slightest bit of kindness, and I'd already forgotten my place and started acting entitled. "Good girl. I'm going to take a shower," he said, releasing me with a lazy smile. With an extra adult for dinner, I took more ingredients out of the fridge, my hands moving mechanically while my mind was elsewhere. I had changed into a simple cotton pajama set. Suddenly, a pair of damp arms wrapped around my stomach, and wet hair tickled my ear. "I've never seen you in pajamas like this," Cole whispered. I always kept silky camisoles and nightgowns ready to please him. This was the first time I'd ever let him see my dressed-down, at-home self. "Mommy." Penny's voice grew closer. Cole shot back as if he'd been electrocuted, putting distance between us. "Did you finish it all?" I asked. "No," Penny drew out the word. "Mommy said I could only have a little, so I only had a little." "Good girl." I wiped my hands on my apron and stroked her head. "Penny, why don't you go look at a picture book for a bit? Dinner will be ready soon." After the boba high wore off, Penny's interest in Cole resurfaced. "Mommy, who is he?" I glanced at Cole, momentarily speechless. "I'm your mommy's coworker," Cole said, squatting down to her level. "Do you know what a coworker is?" "I know." "Like Leo and Mia," Penny said, preening, as if waiting for praise. "Not exactly the same." Cole was about to say more, but I cut him off. "Penny, why don't you let the uncle read you a storybook?" The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted my impulsiveness. I watched him nervously, and he frowned slightly. I quickly tried to backtrack. Mr. Cole, if it's not convenient. Let's go, he said, crossing his arms. I've read to my friend's kid before. I let out a sigh of relief, a little choked up. This was the first time Penny had ever spent time with her father. After dinner, Cole coaxed me back to his place. Even though we'd been intimate so many times, I still felt nervous when we were alone. How old is your daughter? He asked. 4, I said, shaving a year off. Was she a C-section? Cole asked. My hand instinctively moved toward my C-section scar, but his hand got there first, covering mine. We had held hands countless times. In our most passionate moments, I would cling to him like a vine, his palms scorching hot. He tightened his grip. Did it hurt, giving birth? I feigned calmness, terrified of what he might be implying. Did he know? It would be a lie to say it didn't hurt, but since he's gone, I needed something to remember him by, I said, using my fabricated ex-boyfriend as a shield. Cole squeezed my hand tightly. You two must have been very close. I couldn't read his tone, but the pain in my hand told me he was not happy. I don't want to talk about the past, I said, pulling away from him. I have to go. I can't leave Penny home alone. He didn't say anything, just leaned back against the headboard, the dim light casting a shadow over his face. I couldn't see his expression, but it was clear he wasn't going to stop me. The first thing I did when I got home was check on Penny. I always found myself studying Penny's face, pulling at her chubby cheeks. They say daughters look like their fathers, and I was terrified of seeing a trace of Cole in her features. Thankfully, Penny still had her baby fat. Forget looking like anyone in particular, she looked just like every other toddler. If she were in a crowd of kids, even I, her own mother, might not be able to pick her out. But tonight at dinner, her nervous expressions and little fidgets. I closed my eyes, refusing to think about it. Women are emotional creatures. I didn't have any feelings for Cole at first, but things were different now. I was starting to fall for him, and a crazy thought even crossed my mind, to tell him Penny was his daughter. But then what? Would Cole even want Penny? And even if he wanted her, would he want me? I held a cigarette in my hand, then put the pack back where I'd hidden it. The smell of tobacco hung in the air on the balcony. I opened the window, and a sudden blast of cold wind hit my face, shocking me back to my senses. It was time to end this. Some busybody posted photos from the gala of Cole and Penny interacting in the company group chat. You guys, you don't think Hannah's kid is Mr. Cole's? Even though it was worded vaguely, everyone got the implication. No way. Hannah's so plain and simple, not Mr. Cole's type at all. Don't spread rumors. Hannah's fiancé passed away, the baby was born after he died. An older employee jumped in to defend me. You people need to watch your mouths. It's bad enough that little Penny doesn't have a father, and now you're spreading dirty rumors. Please be mindful of your words. More and more colleagues started speaking up for me. I can't believe these people, Mia said, even angrier than I was. How does Penny look anything like Mr. Cole? Penny is adorable. Leo added, puffing out his cheeks. Mr. Cole is nowhere near as charming as Penny. Just as Leo finished his sentence, Mr. Cole cleared his throat behind him. Standing next to him was a client, trying to stifle a laugh. Our Mr. Cole has the natural air of a king, Leo said, his expression unchanged. We wouldn't dare to like him, we can only admire him from a distance. Then he turned around as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Mr. Cole, you're here. Cole gave him a long, hard look before striding away. That scared me to death, Leo said, leaning on Mia. How does Mr. Cole walk so quietly? Mia, can you take this file to Mr. Cole for me? Leo pleaded, looking pitifully at her. If you're too scared, what makes you think I'm not? Mia shoved him away. And get off me, don't take advantage. Leo's pleading eyes then turned to me. Great. It was finally time for me, the person at the center of the storm, to step up. Cole, is she really your daughter? Do you believe that? I raised my hand to knock, but stopped when I heard their voices from inside the office. I'm not a fan of kids, Cole's cold voice said. Especially whiny little girls. I can't stand them. I stood frozen outside the door, my face pale. So he didn't like kids at all. Then why did he read to Penny? Composing myself, I knocked on the office door. Mr. Cole, there's a document that needs your signature. Come in. He took the contract from my hand, and after signing it, said, Hannah, don't bring your child to the office again. Your salary isn't low. You shouldn't need to bring her here for a meal. With that, he handed the signed contract back to me without once looking at me. I understand, Mr. Cole. It won't happen again, I said, my face impassive as I apologized immediately. Cole, you're being too harsh, the client said. I shot the client a grateful look and quickly escaped that suffocating room. Penny, would you want to leave New York and live somewhere else? I asked while tucking her into bed. Mommy, why would we leave New York? Penny asked, blinking her big eyes at me. I'm just asking, sweetie. It's a hypothetical, I said, stroking her head. Where would we go if we left? Penny asked again. And when would we leave? My teacher said we're going on a class trip this winter. Mommy, can I go on the trip with my friends? After she fell asleep, I opened my banking app. I had enough savings for my daughter and me to live comfortably back in my hometown. Come over. An unexpected message popped up. I pretended I didn't see it. He sent another, I know you're not asleep. So what? I turned my phone off. A few moments later, the doorbell rang. Terrified of waking Penny, I rushed to the door. Cole was standing there again, a slight smirk on his lips as if to say he knew this would happen. Mr. Cole, please stop coming here unannounced, I said, looking down. Having a strange man in the house isn't good for Penny. Are you angry? Cole grabbed my hand, but I shook it off. Because of what I said this afternoon? I'm not angry, I said. He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look up at him, his tone mocking. Just because I wouldn't let your daughter come to the office? You eat my food, you live in my building, what more could you possibly be unhappy about? I can find it cute when you throw a little tantrum, Mommy, he said, tracing my jaw with his other hand. But too much of it, and I lose interest. He threw me over his shoulder, found the master bedroom with practiced ease, and tossed me onto the bed. No, Mommy. Penny's cries came from outside the door. Cole just smirked and locked it, pinning me down with one hand. Mommy, open the door. Penny's fists were small, and her banging wasn't loud, but each thump was like a knife twisting in my heart. Cole, what the hell is wrong with you? I struggled desperately. Penny is crying. I met his dark eyes, which were like pools of ink, his whole demeanor that of an unfeeling machine. Can't you hear the child crying? I kicked out at him, but he caught my foot with his other hand. I don't like it when children cry, he growled, leaning in like a rabid dog, his breathing heavy. I much prefer it when you cry. Catching him off guard, I bit down hard on his hand. He wasn't expecting it and reflexively pulled back to look at the bite mark. I scrambled free, unlocked the door, and swept Penny into my arms. Mommy, I'm scared. I dreamed a big bad wolf took you away, Penny sobbed, tears clinging to her eyelashes. Mommy, can I sleep with you tonight, please? I kissed her forehead and nose. Dreams aren't real, Mommy loves Penny the most. I started carrying her toward her room, but Penny resisted. Mommy, I want to go to your room. Penny, Mommy will sleep with you, I said, hoisting her little bottom up. Don't be scared. Penny slept restlessly for the rest of the night, her eyes fluttering open several times to make sure I was still there. Cole didn't bother me again. I never heard the front door close, so I assumed he had gone to sleep too. Penny claimed she was too scared and didn't have the energy to go to preschool. Nonsense, I said, tapping her little nose. Kids have the most energy of anyone. She pouted and tried to bargain. Can I have egg tarts for breakfast then? I haven't had them in so long. If Penny gives Mommy a kiss, then Mommy will make egg tarts, I teased. Kisses, Mommy, kisses, Penny said, planting 2 sweet pecks on my cheek before letting out a sudden ah. I turned to see Cole, looking perfectly presentable, walk out of my bedroom. Good morning, Penny, he said, before casually pulling out a chair at the table. Mommy, why is he in our house? Penny's face was a mask of confusion. Mommy's bedroom light was broken, so this uncle came over this morning to fix it, I said, forcing a calm I didn't feel, terrified Cole's sub-zero mouth would say something even colder. Penny stared at Cole for a moment, then sat in the chair next to him. I'm having egg tarts for breakfast. What about you? Cole didn't look at Penny. He looked at me. I'll have whatever your mommy is making. Penny's little face scrunched up like a piece of dried tofu skin. After deep consideration, she said, You want egg tarts, too? Then you have to kiss Mommy. Kiss Mommy? Cole grinned playfully. All right. He even started to stand up. No need, there's enough for everyone, I said, forcing a smile. When I got back from dropping Penny off at preschool, Cole was still there. Ever since I'd decided to leave him, I'd become bolder. Why are you still here? I said. Really waiting to fix the lights? And you? Cole sat on the beige sofa, his long limbs looking a bit cramped. Why aren't you at work? I have to go to the bank, I said, adding before he could find fault, I already cleared it with HR. HR didn't tell me. Cole. I stood over him, looking down. You're overstepping. Or maybe, I bent down to meet his gaze. You've fallen for me? I think you're overthinking things, Ms. Yi, Cole said, rising from the sofa. We business people always want to maximize our benefits. Your cooking is very good. I'd like you to be responsible for my 3 meals a day as well. Thank you for the high praise, Mr. Cole, I said, turning my back to him. Today is the last day of the month. Our arrangement ends here. I'll transfer the extra money back to your account this afternoon. Ms. Yi, are you sure you want to end such a good deal? Isn't that a loss for you? Cole wrapped his arms around me from behind. To be honest, I've very much enjoyed our partnership. Won't you reconsider? I pulled his hands off me. I'll be honest too, Mr. Cole. The money you give me isn't that much. I'd be better off finding someone else. Someone else who won't ask me to cook. Hannah, he said, his tone serious now. I don't give second chances. Good, because I don't like looking back, either, I said, bravely meeting his eyes for the first time, making my position clear. Hannah, I'll be waiting for you to come crawling back to me. I had to break my promise to Penny. After returning the extra money to Cole, I submitted my resignation to the secretarial office and took Penny back to my hometown. The old house, uninhabited for years, had a musty smell. I called a cleaning service and booked a room for Penny and me at a small motel for the time being. I thought Penny would be disappointed and sad, but she was incredibly curious about the old house, asking one question after another. I took Penny to see my grandmother's grave, and my parents as well. My parents had been so determined to divorce. They packed their bags, arranged for a car, and had even decided to leave town the second they got the divorce certificate. But neither of them ever seemed to care about the child they were leaving behind. They got into a car accident on the way to the courthouse. The divorce never happened, and neither did they. My grandmother always told me to let go of my resentment, that adults have their own difficult reasons for things. But I was so bitter. If they wanted a divorce, if neither of them wanted a child, why did they have me in the first place? Mom, Dad, this is my daughter, Penny. It was ironic. They were on the brink of divorce, yet here they were, buried in the same plot under the same headstone. That evening, I took Penny for wontons at the old market. Time had passed, and the man running the stall was no longer the same, nor was the flavor what I remembered. Penny, let's live here from now on, I said, pinching her cheek. She was too busy scooping up wontons with her porcelain spoon to be bothered with me. "Mommy, will that uncle be able to find us?" she asked. Her question stopped me in my tracks. "Which uncle?" "The one who fixed the lights. He won't be looking for you anymore?" "No," I smiled at Penny. "If the lights in our house break, we can just call building maintenance to fix them." "Yay!" Penny suddenly hopped off her seat and threw her arms around my legs. No one's going to fight with Penny for Mommy anymore. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "What makes you think he was trying to fight for Mommy?" When Tiffany finished her cookie from the teacher and wanted mine, her eyes looked just like that uncle's. "Then why did you offer him an egg tart?" I asked. "I was scared you would like him too," Penny said with complete seriousness. "I was scared you'd be sad." "Penny," I hesitated, but some things were just too hard to say. There were some old photos in the house, and Penny loved asking me who the people in them were. I told her about her great-grandmother, her grandmother, and her grandfather. "Where did they go?" Penny asked. I asked her if she remembered the time I took her to burn memorial paper. Penny thought for a moment, then wrapped her arms around me like a little adult and said she would always be with me. Finding a job was surprisingly easy. The accountant at the county's experimental elementary school had moved away, and I successfully took over the position. An elderly couple from out of town lived across the hall. They were very kind to Penny and me. Sometimes, when I was too busy, I'd send Penny over to practice calligraphy with the old gentleman. One day, I came home and knocked on their door, but there was no answer. I figured they had taken Penny out for a walk, but then I heard a noise coming from inside my own apartment. I opened my door to find Penny playing with blocks on the floor next to the sofa. There was also a strange man in the room. The man stood up awkwardly from the sofa. "I'm so sorry, I came in without your permission." Penny insisted on coming back to play with her blocks, and her grandparents didn't feel right letting her be alone, so they asked me to come with her. It turned out he was the grandson of the elderly couple across the hall. "It's okay, you're a guest Penny invited over," I said, waving it off. After a few more encounters, we got to know each other. His name was Miles, and he was a graduate student studying abroad. "Hannah, I would have brought you an umbrella if I'd known." After a staff meeting, my colleagues and I went out for dinner, and I had left Penny with our neighbors again. "It's fine," a coworker gave me a ride home. "Oh, I see," Miles said with a small smile. "Penny, say bye-bye to Miles," I said, calling her to leave. Not long after we got home, the doorbell rang again. I thought Penny had forgotten something and Miles was bringing it over, but an unexpected person was standing at the door. "Don't close it." He stuck his leg in the doorway, and I didn't dare push. "Hannah, Penny's." Just then, Miles also opened his door. The atmosphere hung in a strange, tense silence. "Hannah, Penny's hair clip." He handed it to me, then stood next to Cole, showing no intention of leaving. I had no choice but to let them both in. Penny didn't seem to remember Cole at all. She lounged comfortably next to Miles, telling him to change the channel on the TV. "Penny, don't you remember me?" Cole gently reached for Penny's hand, but she pulled away. He seemed completely unprepared for Penny's cold reaction, his hands hovering in the air for a long moment before he let them drop. He took out his phone and tapped away. A few minutes later, a delivery arrived with several cups of boba tea. Cole, acting as if nothing had happened, called Penny over to have some. I frowned, about to intervene, when I heard her say, "Thank you, Uncle, but Penny doesn't drink boba tea anymore." "Penny, it's okay to have one once in a while," he said, handing her a cup with the straw already in it. Penny didn't refuse it. Just as a glimmer of light appeared in Cole's eyes, she handed the boba to Miles. "Miles, adults can drink this." Cole finally cracked. His good breeding prevented him from snatching the drink out of Miles's hand, but he was clearly unwilling to let it go. "Penny, I'll come see you again tomorrow," he said, stumbling to his feet and walking toward the door, looking completely dejected. I wanted to tell him not to come back, but his heartbroken expression made me hold my tongue. Not long after Cole left, Miles left too, making sure to take all the boba with him. "Penny, you're a kid, you can't have boba. I'll buy you yogurt tomorrow." Penny watched Miles leave with puppy dog eyes, looking like a sad little animal. "Penny, do you really not remember that uncle?" I asked. "I remember him," she said. "Then why did you?" Before I could finish, Penny asked me, "Mommy, will that uncle be my daddy?" I froze, struggling to get the word out. "No." "Then we're strangers," Penny said with a blink. "We're not supposed to talk to strangers." Cole came again the next day. This time he brought lots of gifts, dolls, princess dresses, but Penny didn't accept a single one. At his wit's end, he looked at me with pleading eyes. Panic set in. Why was Cole being so nice to Penny? Did he already know she was his daughter? I thought back to the conversation he'd had with his friend. Could he have impulsively gotten a DNA test? I quickly dismissed the thought, because he then said that if I was willing to come back to him, he would raise Penny as his own daughter. "You said you don't give second chances," I said, smiling as I pushed his hand away. "I regret it," he said, pulling me into a desperate hug. "I really regret it." My arms hung limply at my sides as he held me. "But I don't." Cole looked at me in disbelief, then kissed me clumsily, trying to force my lips open, but I remained cold and unresponsive. He pressed my hand against his chest. "Can you really not feel anything at all?" I didn't say a word. I just held up my smartwatch to his face. "Heart rate, normal." "Hannah, you're cruel," he said, his eyes filled with a dark emotion. "Leaving me, you haven't regretted it for a second?" "No regrets," my voice was quiet but firm. "You win," Cole said, rubbing his face hard. Cole, will only stoop this low once." Cole's arrival was sudden, and his departure was just as abrupt. My life with Penny returned to its peaceful routine. Before Miles went back to school, he asked if I would ever get back together with Penny's father. "Penny's dad seems like a pretty powerful guy," he said, scratching the back of his head shyly. "If you're not going to reconcile with him, my family and I really like Penny, and, well, you see. We might get back together," I blurted out, not correcting his assumption that Cole was Penny's father. "That makes sense," he said with an awkward smile. "Who wouldn't love you, or love Penny?" When Miles went back to school, Penny clung to his leg and cried for a long time. "Penny, it's not like I'm not coming back," Miles said, holding her in his arms, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "How about you come abroad with me? I'll find a preschool for you there." Penny took him seriously and told me to pack her bags, which made me so mad I punched Miles twice. When the seasons changed, Penny caught a cold. Her fever kept coming back and wouldn't break. I took her for a checkup. The doctor's expression was grave, and he said they needed to wait for a consultation with specialists. "Mommy, when are we going home?" Penny leaned against me, listless. My heart plummeted. I swallowed hard several times, my mouth as dry as sandpaper. "Doctor, does she need to be admitted?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Have a family member bring some clothes over," the doctor said. "We don't have the final results yet." "Okay. Penny, you be a good girl here with the nice doctor." "Mommy's just going to the restroom," I said, shooting the doctor a pleading look as tears welled in my eyes. I rushed to the restroom, covering my mouth so I wouldn't sob out loud. My Penny. My daughter. Thankfully, after the specialist's consultation, it turned out to be nothing serious. I let out a huge sigh of relief and collapsed onto the floor, unable to calm myself for a long time. The lead specialist stared at me for a while before asking uncertainly, "Excuse me, is your mother Eleanor's son?" I hadn't heard that name in so long. I froze, then nodded numbly. "It really is you. You look exactly like Eleanor," she said, suddenly beaming. "She showed me a picture of you back then. So many years have passed in a flash. I can't believe it." She suddenly started crying without warning. Your child is already so big. If Eleanor were still here, she would be so happy. I quickly fumbled for a tissue in my pocket and handed it to her. She wiped her eyes and asked me to wait for her in her office. Hearing the name Eleanor's son again didn't stir any emotion in me, but Dr. Evans was incredibly moved. She told me she was my mother's college classmate. Eleanor was always a top student, Dr. Evans said, looking at me, but I felt like she was looking through me. If it weren't for the car accident, your mother would be far more accomplished than I am today. All I knew was that my mother was my mother. I knew nothing else about her. When she and your father decided to divorce, she had already been accepted into a master's program, Dr. Evans sighed. She married your father right after college and had you soon after. Going back to school was a difficult decision for her. A bunch of us tried to persuade her to leave you at home. Dr. Evans's voice was filled with guilt. A person only has so much energy. It's impossible to raise a child and study at the same time. Hannah, a child is always number one in a mother's heart. When the child is around, the mother always puts them first. Between you and her future, we advised her to choose her future. But, Dr. Evans said, her voice thick with emotion, your mother insisted on taking you with her. I stood there, stunned. Dr. Evans, you must be joking. When they divorced, neither of them wanted me. Impossible, Dr. Evans said, her expression serious. Your mother called me herself. I saw my mother packing her bags with my own eyes. She and my dad went to the courthouse only after their luggage was packed, I said with a helpless smile. That can't be right, she said, looking utterly confused. She even asked me to help find a preschool for you. In a flash, something clicked. Dr. Evans, I need to take Penny home from the hospital first. I'll bring her to see you in a couple of days. When I got home, I couldn't wait to open the door that had been shut for so long. After my parents' accident, their luggage, along with their past, was sealed away in that small room. The latches on the leather suitcase were rusted. With a crisp click, the contents of the suitcase were revealed to me, along with my mother's clothes were mine. A lake blue leather-bound notebook lay quietly among the clothes, its cover faded. I carefully opened it. The smudged ballpoint pen ink not only chronicled my childhood but also the complex worries of a mother. Hannah can talk now. Her voice is so sweet. Maybe she can be a broadcaster someday. All my classmates have jobs, but I have Hannah. Will Hannah resent me for not having a job? What should I do? Her dad has been coming home late recently. What is he doing out there? I feel more and more insecure. He and I are fighting over Hannah. Hannah has to come with me. I couldn't finish the diary. I couldn't bring myself to turn another page. All these years, what was I even so angry about? Penny touched my face with her small hands. Mommy, why are you crying? Penny, Mommy is the dumbest person in the world. No, you're not. Mommy is the smartest person in the world, and so is Penny. Winter break finally arrived. So much had happened this year. Miles came back from his studies, and Penny became his little shadow, not even wanting me, her own mother. Cole, true to his word, never contacted me again. On New Year's Eve, I took Penny to visit the graves of my parents and grandmother. That night, for the first time in forever, I dreamed of them. In the dream, my young parents were arguing over me, neither willing to give up custody. Later, my father relented and let me go with my mother, on the condition that she wouldn't hide me from him. The scene shifted to the day of their accident. My grandmother told me to go see my parents one last time, but I stubbornly refused. After that, whenever my grandmother mentioned them, I would cover my ears, unwilling to listen. I didn't understand the complex look in my grandmother's eyes back then, but in the dream, as an observer, I saw it with perfect clarity. Everything around me spun like a carousel. I desperately chased their fading figures until I suddenly heard Penny's voice. It was the first day of the new year. Mommy, Happy New Year. I wish you great fortune. Penny, dressed in red long johns, scrambled into my arms. I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes and hugged her tight. Happy New Year, my love. From now on, every year was going to be a happy one.